Thank you. And I think that's something I've heard a lot because I do think actually we were even the biggest, if not one of the biggest product marketing teams in France at the time. I think that just to be clear, we pivoted a million times in what we were doing. And, like as the company was growing and the flows were changing, we were also adapting with that. But I think the key point to call out here is the fact that we had an incredible relationship with the CPO and the product managers.
And we are live. Theresa, first of all, welcome to the show. I'm super happy to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Ivan. I'm very excited to be here.
Where are you from? What are you doing? What's your story?
Okay. I'm originally Austrian, so I grew up in Salzburg, but always was obsessed with wanting to be I guess, more internationally minded. And so actually went abroad when I was 15 to live with a host family in London. And that kind of completely changed my life already from that date on. I then studied in London, took a year off to study in Boston, and then came back, finished university, started at a fintech startup or an expert network called Alpha Sites. That's where my career started in sales. And then moved to Dublin to start working at LinkedIn. There I had lots of different roles, always customer facing, starting with being an analyst for some of the biggest customers we were looking after in Europe. Then I was super annoying and persistent to move to New York because it was a big dream to go back to the US after being in Boston. And after 1 year working in Ireland, I managed to get a role being in sales, but supporting our product sales at LinkedIn. Again, for the biggest customers that we were servicing in North America. And honestly, I was that person that in sales already gave so much feedback constantly to the product team of all the things I was hearing from my customers and was harassing them so much in product that at one point they're like, you know what, just come over, just work on our side. And that's when I started working in product marketing at LinkedIn, launching the biggest product at the time called Talent Insights. It's a really amazing product that I sold to some of my other current companies, actually. And then after 4 years in New York, kind of felt like wanting to move back to Europe and wanting to find somewhere where I could work in product, but at HQ level. And so because WeWork at the time was quite big and it's very localized because it's real estate, I started working there to change the brand perception from more like the beer pong co-working vibe to enterprise. And then COVID hit. And so from that, we had to honestly find a way to innovate and still make money because no one wanted to come into the office. And at the time, the best way to do that was actually, I realized that people weren't afraid to actually go into the office. They were afraid to commute. And so that's when I built a product called All Access. It's very simple. It just means that you get to book into any WeWork that's close to you rather than going to the one that you have an office in. And that actually, I used this myself in Paris because I wanted to test the city. And so I came to Paris to work for WeWork London for a few months, fell in love with the city, and then decided to move to Paris. And from there, I started working at the French fintech that now is a big unicorn scale up called Contour. It's basically your professional finances all in one. And from there, I started the product marketing from 0 to over 20 people. And I recently left, sorry, that's such a long-winded way of telling my story. I recently left in December to start my own business called Kundra at the beginning of this year. And so now I'm 5 months in, and it's been an amazing journey so far. Voilà. Live in Paris still.
All right. It took a lot of notes. Let's start from the diversity of cultures and places you've been working. Austria, US, France. What do you think it involves? I mean, culturally speaking, today we are thinking often about global companies, about global environments, but it's still difficult, to merge these gaps in terms of culture, time zones, etc. So what are your key takeaways from all of these different environments you've been working, and what are some pitfalls or downsides that were part of your experience there?
That's a great question. I think I need to be careful to also differentiate working at WeWork or LinkedIn. These are real proper global companies where we also had products across many different markets that are quite different. I'm not undermining Contour. We also had up to 8 markets by the time that I left, actually. So it was more European focused. So maybe starting with the global companies, it was interesting because I actually really enjoyed working with US and American minded people because it's very efficient, it's very driven, it's very ROI focused. And I mean, this is a stereotype, but it's true. People just generally are more, they share more recognition. They're more like, this is great. What we're doing is incredible. So it really helps motivate you, I would say. So I really liked those environments because it's fast paced and we're driven and we want to achieve results, but we also continuously pat each other on the back. So I really liked that. That being said, I think what US companies, because you asked me about pitfalls, what US companies sometimes get wrong is that they just assume, and again, it's a big stereotype I'm making here, that you copy paste your product into Europe. And I mean, I think everyone's aware of this, but I give you a very concrete example, one that I tried to personally fight for all this time. When you have the recruiter license, that's a LinkedIn product that allows you to reach out to candidates as an HR person. They usually have pre populated templates, and 99% of people use these templates because it's so valuable, because you can be more efficient. And at the time, in the template of the German version, we only said, hey there, basically, like a very informal way of saying hello. This is not how you speak to candidates in Germany. I mean, maybe in the startup world now it's a bit more chill, but at the time, definitely not, especially for most of our clients that were enterprises and hiring in like consultancy or financial services, etc. And so I've been basically lobbying for years to try to just change that little intro to the formal version of the German.
Hmm.
And it was almost impossible to get product. I think after maybe 3 years or so, I managed to get that changed. But just to show you and that impact, I mean, for a German customer to finally see that we as LinkedIn understood their culture
Hmm.
was hugely changing. And I think that's what was nice with WeWork actually, because they understood from the get-go to some extent that, I mean, again, real estate is so localized that you needed to build a product that works for the region in particular. And then at Conto, it was the other extreme because here we're talking about banking. So the regulatory environments are so different that you have to be hyper localized. And I also think that's what the strength of the Conto product was in the end, because you see Revolut, they're doing very well, but they
Hmm.
have a Lithuanian IBAN that they're just copy pasting everywhere. They've also improved a bit on this. But voilà, I would say that would kind of be the main takeaways. It's been amazing working across different cultures, and there are some things that are great about it and some things I think that especially US need to learn still in terms of expansion.
Yeah, it makes sense. Teresa, looking at your CV, so obviously you have a lot of very strong companies or brands, in your background. What kind of impact is this having on your career, on your professional development? Did it benefit? And the reason I'm asking this question is because lots of people tend to chase working for established companies or famous companies because it's supposed to help you accelerate or improve your career. What's your experience around this topic?
That's a great question. I think in general, everyone always tells you what's worked for them. So I
Hmm.
only have that vision because I can talk to you about what my experience was and what's worked for me. So I think that as a junior person, going to a bigger, more established company, I mean, again, LinkedIn at the time when I joined, I think we had only several thousand employees globally. And at the time, we had probably about 400 in Dublin. When I left, we were about 2,000 in Dublin. So it was still kind of small for a big established company. I'd say that that really did benefit me because first of all, of course, it's a very reputable name. So I do think that in the future positions where I was trying to interview, that gave me credibility and legitimacy. But I'm actually talking more about the ability to learn. And this is what I'm saying. I think it depends on what you've gone through. But personally, for me, it really helped me to have something that's a bit structured. So you have senior people around you, have specialists around you that can help you in a different marketing functions or different types of acquisition you can do. You really can learn from very experienced people, which I loved, but it wasn't rigid so that I could still bring up my own ideas and change and adapt. And so I guess you could say that in that way, it really personally helped grow me and I learned a lot that I wouldn't have, or maybe I would have learned, but differently by doing if I were to go to a startup, for example. And
Yeah.
so I guess to answer your question, being young and being at these big companies, definitely credibility and definitely more structure and learning. But again, with not like, I think that also depends for what you're looking for in the future. But for me, what was great is that I still wanted to make my own impact and find ways of creating my own path. And those types and size of companies still allowed me to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe last thing to say, I don't know if I would have gotten the opportunity to really grow the product marketing team from scratch at Contour without these kinds of backgrounds, because they really took a risk on hiring me, but I took a big risk, of course, as well, because I didn't know where Contour was going to go. And luckily, they're doing
Went
super
well.
well. But at the time, that wasn't obvious, So
One area that I would like to explore with you, the way I remember you when we met in person, I think your leadership, your personality, your way of engaging with people, public speaking, I think really stands out. So I'm curious to hear if that's something that you've learned. Was it something that you had like embedded in your DNA? And if you did anything, what did you do in order to improve those skills?
first of all, thank you very much, Ivan. That's very kind. Also, I think it's because I just love it. Side note. I guess I would go back all the way to being a child. I actually always wanted to be an actress. And that already shows the personality trait. You want to be on stage, you want to engage an audience. So I think I already had that inside of me as a human. I really just enjoyed that ability to just story tell in front of a big audience, basically. However, I definitely wasn't perfect from the get go. This to me is definitely something that's a skill you can learn. And that's what I've always said to my team as well, because public speaking, and I will get to what the tactical tips were in my career, but public speaking is really something that is valuable at any point in time in your life, I believe. And what's interesting is I think in Europe, and maybe I'm generalizing, we don't put as much emphasis on this as people would in the US, for instance. And so I would say developing that skill has started even when I was studying in Boston, because a lot of the university structure is around doing work that you then have to present in front of the whole class. And so already you have to kind of practice your skill of public speaking. And then I was really fortunate because when I started working at LinkedIn, they had a lot of actual investment around public speaking. I remember vividly, I did one or two like deep dive trainings with them and it's very awkward. You would film yourself and you'd have to learn like, oh wow, I'm speaking super fast, or like I
Mhm.
don't articulate it well enough, where I stand awkwardly. So having to watch that back then also helps you to kind of, and then you had obviously a proper coach who was pointing out the
Mhm.
things you could improve. So that, and then, I mean, I've never stopped. I keep learning. Even most recently at Conto, I had the opportunity to represent Conto quite frequently as a company, where I would go to events and actually in Spain speak about Conto's product publicly to a huge audience. And there, even Conto invested in having a PR agency train me and film me and to give me additional topics and advice. So I guess all that to say is that it starts with learning, but it doesn't actually end, because I can for sure continue improving on that skill. And it's something that I feel like anyone can learn if they want to.
Give me some examples on how you can learn this skill or improve.
Well, I give you a real life just success story. At LinkedIn, our former CEO, Jeff Weiner, he was the most introverted, super geeky engineer. Like you could never, he didn't even like to speak up in big meetings. And then, of course, I don't know if you've ever seen him speak or have seen a video of him on stage. He's one of the most inspiring, like jaw dropping type of speakers. So the journey to see him go there, like I always was just so inspired by him. And that's for me proof that people can learn. Obviously, he's an executive, so he probably has a lot of investment behind him. But in terms of tactical skills, what I started doing is you pick a topic that you know really well and that you're very passionate about, with maybe the objective to convince someone with a CTA, okay, I'm going to convince you to try it once. So I don't know, let's say I'm super passionate about yoga. I know everything about it. It'll be much easier for me to pitch you, Ivan, as to why you should try it. And so I think that that's a really good starting point to get comfortable speaking in front of an audience. And then maybe starting with a smaller audience of people that don't know you. Because funnily enough, I personally feel this way. I don't know about you. When there is actual family members or people that I know well in the audience, that's when I'm nervous. Like not when it's like complete strangers.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you should start with like the most critical people in your life being like your parents or your siblings or something, but more so try to find opportunities. And actually, there is this global program which I did sign up a couple of team members actually for. It's called Toastmasters.
Yeah.
And I think there you start the same vibe. You start with a topic that you care about, that you know well, and then you keep going on from there and like kind of move your way up towards more strategic, maybe work related topics.
Is there any difference between virtually presenting and in person in terms of skill sets, in terms of what you should keep in mind?
Great question. I do think there's a difference. It's so much easier for me personally to present in person, actually. Why? I think it's because, first of all, most of the time, actually, you're standing, and already that gives you your voice is better, your presence more firm and stable. So I really prefer to present in person, and the adrenaline of seeing everyone in the room, I think, helps as well to and I think that when you do it through your laptop, it can be a bit awkward for people because who are you talking to? And on top of that, you might want to keep your notes because you can and you want to be safe, but then you lose yourself because you're checking your notes. And so I would say if I could choose, I would always present in person. But I understand that also for some people, it might be easier to do it online. Maybe it's a
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Just before moving to a different topic, going back to the big brands, companies, etc. What do you think can make a profile or a candidate more appealing to those companies? So besides the resume, a typical CV, have you spotted any kind of patterns or any types of profiles that were more interesting for these type of companies when hiring? And we could talk about, marketing, product marketing, but also different types of roles.
That's a great question. I don't think that your actual experience is what makes a difference, because especially if it did, that's really depressing because there's nothing you can do about it. So just because I worked at a family business versus, a super sexy startup, that means now I don't have a chance to work at LinkedIn. I don't think that's true, to be
Hmm.
honest. I think what makes the key difference with such big companies is your intention and showing how much you care. I actually speak about one of my best friend. She has a job as an ad salesperson at Spotify without ever having any experience in ad sales before. And we all know that you have to have that because you're buying into the network basically. So if you don't have that, you shouldn't get a job there. But what she did is she literally proactively connected to people that were already doing the job, asking them for a coffee, seeing if she could learn things from speaking to them. Then she connected with the hiring manager directly, shared some insights that she found that was interesting that he did before. Then she also connected with the global head of sales and referencing an interview that she saw him in. So for me, it's more like the posture and how keen you are and how well you can show, guys, I'm doing my work, I'm doing the research because I really care about this company and I'd
Hmm.
like to be a part of it. So I guess I don't know. I'm not sure if that answers your question because it's not necessarily something I would put on my profile, but it's the attitude and the way to go about it that makes a difference, in my opinion.
Let's give it a try. So let's say you wanted now to apply for your dream company. What would you do? Founder or product marketing job at the company you always wanted to work for. What kind of tactics would you put in place in order to increase your chances of either getting on a call with someone or getting more opportunities to be interviewed?
That's a great question. I'm a master networker. So I would probably find all the kinds of people that work in that surrounding environment, either people that are on that team or people that report into that team or people that are partnering with that team. And I would try to understand what kind of profiles these are and if there's anything I have in common with them. So maybe, I don't know, someone on that team went to Boston College. Well, amazing. I'm going to message that person and be like, oh, we're both in Boston College. So I would try to find connectivity with people that are already on that group of the team or the company. Then I think what I would do is already be very thoughtful in terms of things I would do. So, for example, if it's product marketing, I would really be quite critical and assess the way they do it today to already have some improvement ideas. And then maybe reach out to the potential hiring manager or people again working with that role with some of these ideas. Like, hey, saying like this I think is amazing. I saw your most recent launch video, whatever. I loved it. Have you ever thought about doing it like this, and this? Because I feel like it could get you more conversions or whatever. So I would show them like I have value to add here. And I did my work and research to try to understand your business objectives and your mission. And then I give that advice to my friends all the time. And maybe that's very controversial, but I would never just apply to the job. I would never hit apply button on LinkedIn, for example, because for me, the worry is that you then land in a stack of CVs somewhere in million numbers. Whereas, let's say that I find a way to connect to the girl who does this job or is in the team where we have a similarity. She speaks to me and we have a great coffee. I could ask her, hey, do you think you would be able to refer me? And then that person refers you, meaning for sure you're coming up top. You get
Mhm.
more seen when you're referred, that's for sure. And then what happens ideally is that the hiring manager sees my name and he or she is like, wait, I've seen this girl connecting with me on LinkedIn. She already gave me advice. Let's talk to her. So, kind of finding ways of staying visible, I guess, would be what I would do. I'm not saying that's the ideal scenario, but I would probably approach it this way.
Do you have any recommendations? Because I do believe that you've seen a lot and you now identified some patterns or some things that really makes a candidate stand out. Do you have anything to recommend there?
Yes, again, that's based on my own experience, but I worked with a lot of clients at LinkedIn to help them with this kind of best practice. But I've also hired, obviously, the amount of interviews that I've done to get to the 20 plus people on my team. You can't even imagine. Kundra, we have a higher rate of less than 1%. So you can only picture how many people we talk to. And so, in terms of how I would structure a CV, I think most importantly, it's what are the outputs and what's the impact? Because more importantly, what's the impact? Because I see CVs sometimes where it's literally like helped with a marketing campaign or something like this. And I'm like, okay, first of all, hate the word helped because it's like, so what? There's been 5 people in the group and you did what? You printed it? Or like, what did you do? I'm exaggerating, but you see where I'm
Yeah.
going with this. I don't like when people say we or, this kind of situation. And then a marketing campaign. Okay, what was the purpose? What was the impact? Did you achieve your ROI? What, were you looking to do? So I think it's kind of like anything else. When you sell yourself, you need to be super specific as to what about you is it that is
Yeah.
incredible and not the company or not, the team. It's great that the team's doing well and that you get along with the team very well, but okay, I can't hire the whole team. So why would I hire you in particular? And so I guess to summarize, I would say very specific on the key projects that you owned. And then what were the key outputs and ROI, the impact that
Mhm.
you can show that would be interesting to see as a hiring manager. And for me, what's always interesting as well, but again, that's a personal perspective because that also means the types of companies I've worked for. I always like seeing someone who's worked in more diverse teams
Mhm.
and has also already worked in an environment that can be, again, in my case, I hired for startups. So I really need to see can they roll up their sleeves? Can they, as a personality type, like are they ready to tackle things head on? Are they also someone who can question things? And that's less so on the profile, but more so in the interview. I can't tell you how much I hate when I ask somebody at the end, do you have any questions for me? And they say no. And then I'm like, okay, well, then that's a bad sign. You
Mhm.
should challenge me just as much I'm challenging you. You're also making a huge decision about your life going forward. So ask me what could be a challenge in that new scenario. Anyway.
Yeah, that's true. Moving to the next topic. Actually, I have two more topics about your previous role at Conto. So
Yeah.
the first one is actually growing the team. So I'm very curious. You were fortunate enough and structured enough to grow to a number of product marketers inside the team that's probably above the average product marketing team size that I would see in other companies. So can you walk me through how did you get from, scratch or very little unorganized product marketing team to a well-functioning product marketing in terms of, timeline strategies, priorities, what has been working for you?
I mean, thank you. And I think that's something I've heard a lot because I do think actually we were even the biggest, if not one of the biggest product marketing teams in France at the time. I think that just to be clear, we pivoted a million times in what we were doing. And, like as the company was growing and the flows were changing, we were also adapting with that. But I think the key point to call out here is the fact that we had an incredible relationship with the CPO and the product managers. And so our PMM role actually was a lot more involved in actually building the product rather than just launching it. I'm just saying high level. And so as we were growing our functionalities on the product side in terms of the types of products we were building, we were growing PMM with that. And I think that's due to the amazing work that the team is doing because they're all they're really brilliant, and the unique value that they were bringing to the product team. And what was that? In my opinion, it was truly understanding the must-haves to be able to sell it. And so I'm not undermining the product manager. The product manager is the owner and the decision maker as to what the functionalities will look like in the end, obviously. But what I think the team brought from my perspective was more around, okay, if we were to build it this way, will that give us a competitive edge as a whole in terms of Contour? How are other competitors positioning this? And is there something that we could do slightly differently that would bring a USP to the functionality? And in addition to that, it was also tied to what are the users willing to buy? Again, not use, because that's, I think, the perspective of usability is always the product manager, product designer, and they're the best at doing that. But for us, it was more so thinking about, okay, would they pay for it? And if so, what else? What are the must-haves of that? So that combined with the fact that we were still also taking care of the launching aspect, collaborating with all the marketing functions, I think that ended up becoming such a big workload that it was valuable to have somebody specialized on each of these functionalities and do both halves.
Mhm.
That being said, at the very end, when I left Contour, we had restructured the team to actually have two very concrete functions. One focusing on the product side that I just discussed, and the other one actually focusing more on the market side. Because
Okay.
what we realized over time as well as became more strategic and we could be more targeted in terms of when should we have our releases rather than, whenever it's ready, let's ship. That was really nice because those guys in that case were building more the narrative that was going on throughout the year in each market.
Mhm.
Hope that answers your question.
It does. Did you already had in mind the way the team would look like in the future when you started hiring and structuring it? Or was it like build the, what is it called? Build or fly the,
Build a
uh,
plane while you're
yeah,
flying.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that was our mantra at Contour.
Okay.
We were always building the plane while we're flying it. So I wish I could say to you, like, yes, I saw the vision of where Contour was going and I already knew the kind of main pillars I wanted to have PMMs on. But no, honestly, it
Okay.
was really, we did it as we went. And again, I am super grateful because leadership at Conto is so agile and really supportive of new ideas. And my team as well, because bless them, imagine if every 6 months or so you're like, all right, cool, you're no longer doing this, you're now doing that as
Yeah.
well. So you have to also be quite open-minded as an IC, like an individual contributor, to be able to follow along with this.
How did you prioritize the responsibilities of the product marketers as the team was growing? Was it according to the product priorities? Was it according to your vision of product marketing, whether that's structuring it by country, by segment, by product, etc.? How did you go about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we had two key pillars at Conto already. We had anything to do with core banking and then anything beyond core banking. So we already
Hmm.
structured it by this starting. Then below these two pillars, we had this, I guess, assessment on how much customer impact will this have. So to be very transparent with you, we wouldn't have a PMM on our squad or
Hmm.
cross-functional team that focuses on, let's say, fraud. We had someone who still, of course, helped weave the fraud positioning into our overall content positioning, but we
Hmm.
didn't help launch products for a fraud. And so we tried to prioritize in terms of, okay, where do we get the most revenue from? Where is the biggest opportunity for customers?
Hmm.
As well as where do we need the most educational effort?
Okay.
So I give you a concrete example. Cards and interchange revenue is usually a big part of banking products. And so that's where we had a strong PMM. But then on the other hand, we also needed a really strong PMM on invoicing because that was a new product that we were releasing. And so that required a lot of education on, okay, now you can actually also invoice your clients or pay your invoices with Konto. So I guess it would be like customer readiness
Hmm.
plus, of course, financial impact. That would be the criteria.
I see. And were you looking for different skill sets, whether that role was fitting more under product or under market or any other specific functions? Was it also the way you were approaching and filtering the candidates?
Yes, definitely. On the product side, I was looking for PMMs that were very curious in terms of customer journey mapping and really understanding, okay, if I have a screen where I have these three bullet points, I don't have enough reassurance, I'm not going to click next. Or, being, again, this is also the job of a PM and a PD. I want to be clear. But our job was how do I sell them to go to the next step on this specific page. So I was looking more for people that were in the weeds a bit and really in the customer's mind. Again, to clarify, not that I'm saying the other half didn't need to be, but it was less so important. Whereas on the market PMM side, what was really important for me here was actually a bit more the strategy and vision of growth, full stop. So here I needed someone who understood, okay, if we want Spain to double in size as a market, what are some of the key requirements that we need to hit? What are some of the key storylines that we need to tell the Spanish customer? And these guys worked super closely with the country directors. So I also needed someone who is senior enough, quote unquote, who is okay to work with a senior audience and influence them because they might have their own go to market ideas, which is fine. And then you collaborate with them to make sure that the storyline matches the
Yeah,
product.
yeah, interesting. What about on a day-to-day basis? So, without, how do you avoid spending all your time on one-to-ones with each members of your team? Because once the team starts growing, probably you need to also rethink the way you operate, you delegate, and you move the team forward. So, what are your learnings there? Because the amount of time you spend, it's limited. So, how do you optimize it when as the team grows?
So packed. But I definitely learned how to better optimize. At the beginning, I had a lot of direct reports for a long time at Conto, actually. And then we managed to insert experts that are kind of managing the little pockets. So core banking, product, and financial management pockets, and then also market pocket, basically. But what I still kept going was one-to-ones with my leaders. So we had those every week. And then what I did instead was this is a really cool concept, actually, and I'd like to talk about it for just 1 minute. There is something that we call Gemba at Konto. They, I'm sad to say that, but at Konto. And it's such a cool concept. It means in Japanese, go and see. And basically, the whole point is that you look at a piece of work together. And you, as the leader, your job is to make the person coming into the room learn something by asking the right questions. Honestly, it's a type of coaching, I would say. And I loved these sessions because for me, these were still opportunities to stay on the ground and really see what kind of products we were launching, but also what kind of outputs we have. And B, it showed me where the skills gaps are on the team, full stop. And so in order to better structure my calendar, I didn't have one-to-ones with all my ICs. I just had 3 blocks of 1.5 hour Gemba times that the managers could book for their ICs to come with a topic. And so again, that helped me to stay close to also coach the manager indirectly because I would see what the IC was doing and I was like, okay, well, let's help them to get here, for instance. And I think that helped me to at least protect my calendar a little bit while still being very close to the team.
I never heard about it, so I'll give it a look. Very interesting concept.
Really cool. I love it.
The other topic I wanted to talk about, I'm not sure if I remember it correctly, but I believe you were sharing the way your team was able to, or you and your team was able to launch features and products fast. I think you were launching very frequently and an important amount of new features. So, from a go-to-market perspective, how did you structure this part? Well, first of all, is that do I remember it correctly?
Yes, at the very beginning when I first joined, we launched features every 2 weeks. It was really this tact. It was very intense.
Walk me through it, please, because 2 weeks for a lot of companies looks like impossible. So, what does it look like from a concrete perspective?
I think, and this is also something that Kundra is extremely good at. We write standards for different things, different skills. And so, just to clarify, a standard is not a process. It's not telling you what to do. A standard is basically outlining what good looks like with key points. But that makes it really easy for someone to replicate something really fast without having someone teaching them, for instance. And so I'll give you an example, like what's the standard of, I don't know, a good launch email? Simple. Here you'd have like a quick outline of what is it, why do we do it, and then what are the key points that make it a good one with an example that looks really good. And so we had a lot of these standards in place for literally almost all the deliverables, no, all the deliverables that we had per launch. And we had a way of working where we already had templates that would help us for things like positioning. And so we worked with Notion. I'm a huge fan. I'm not sure who's listening if you guys use it, but it's so valuable for this kind of thing because you had a super structured short Notion page of positioning for this feature that everyone in the cross-functional teams is aware of and knows how it works. And then thanks to these standards, you could like push out the launch email, the social post, etc. within hours because it was so clear what good looked like.
What's an example of standard? Is it quantifiable? So, let's say it's a number from a scale from 1 to 10, or is it about quality? Is about the shape, the format? How do you build a standard?
It's about quality. It's a quality control tool and a learning tool. And so what usually would happen is, and again, that's why I was telling you we were building the plane while flying it, because we would try something probably 2, 3 times. We would always, and this is what I loved about the Conto culture, we would always reflect, okay, what went well, what didn't go well. And that's actually more interesting so that we can improve. And so after 2, 3 tests, that's when you have some high level idea of what works well. And so you write a standard about it. You say, okay, a good email looks like this because we see that these types of characteristics help the open rate or the click through rate. But what's not to forget is that, and I think that's very different to a lot of companies, it's an ever evolving document. So let's say that you have a standard on how to write a good email. If, let's say, we use the standard and then in the next email campaign, we don't get that click through rate, and we're like, okay, wow, what happened here? We do something that we called at Conto a red bin. We look at it in detail and try to understand what about this email didn't work. And then if there's something learnable out of it, we test it with the next campaign. We're like, okay, maybe I'm making this up. The click through, the CTA should have been higher at the top. So we do the next campaign with the CTA higher at the top. If we have the control metric that ends up showing us, okay, when we do this, it does work, only
Mhm.
then we put it into the standard and we say, okay, from now on, the CTA needs to be higher at the top. So it's a really
Okay.
cool way of constantly improving the way that you work and very important when you're in a scale up like Conto.
I see. Is it time consuming at the beginning to think in terms of standard rather than, templates, as you're saying?
Yeah, so time consuming. We had, and it was kind of nice. We were a small team at the time. We were only, I think, 6 people. I used to book us WeWorks all across Paris because obviously I'm an old WeWorker. So for the afternoon, we would be somewhere on a Friday afternoon in a different environment that felt different, and we would spend 2.5 hours each Friday reworking our standards. Being okay, what did we learn this week? Do we need to build a new one? Do we need to change an old one? So yes, there was a lot of time invested.
Teresa, you said that a good product marketer should think like a founder. Tell me more about this. Where is it coming from?
Well, I think that I wanted to highlight that for me, the fact that I've become a founder now with Kundra, it's almost not shocking at all, because all the things that we do in product marketing literally set us up to be the perfect founder. And again, obviously there are still lots of things for me to learn right now, but I'm just saying the fact that you're so close to your customer, that you're so analytical when it comes to understanding their issues, their problems, the fact that you're an amazing storyteller, because that's the point of being in product marketing, that you can take something super complex and simplified, that you can bring a huge audience along with you, that you can influence people very well because you have to do it with your stakeholders in the past in your corporate companies. I feel really lucky because each time we did a big product launch, it's almost like a founder of that product that you're launching within the company. And so, of course, there's a lot more complexities when you do it as your own company. It's a bit more of a bigger beast to handle, I would say. But I just feel very grateful the fact that I felt very prepared to be a founder because of all the typical PMM skills, actually.
Let's dive a little bit deeper into the personal branding side of it. So I would tend to connect being a founder or entrepreneur to having strong both internal and external personal branding.
I think it's a really cool opportunity, actually, because in my example, so Kundra is a platform that helps companies manage parental leave. Because what we don't realize very often is that in the startups that we work, the median or average age is usually between 28 and 32. So if you're not in the thick of managing parental leave yet, you will be very soon. And something that we don't really understand with parental leave and in general with the whole is the fact that it has huge impact on talent retention, on productivity, and in general also talent attraction. And so I think that it's something I'm very passionate about. I'm not a parent myself, by the way. I want to highlight that. And so that can also be a separate topic that we can talk about. But I think what's really important here is that it's not something that is obvious for a lot of companies. And so for me, it was super important to first bring people along this journey as to why it matters, because it's not an obvious problem for a lot of us. And therefore, I've decided to build in public, which means that going back to your question in terms of personal and professional brand, it's one and the same in my current situation. I am Kundra. Kundra is me. I have a podcast where I interview individuals about their experience. And I think what it does is it amplifies you mentioned earlier about public speaking and how important that is and charisma, etc. But in my opportunity, I take the opportunity to basically amplify authenticity. That's a key value that I have because I'm honestly just still figuring things out, but I'm letting everyone see it so I can bring people along the journey, find potential customers who actually co-build with me, find collaborators. It's a different way of looking at it, but so far it's been super impactful for Kundra and me personally as well.
I can imagine if we were to go tactical in terms of, so you've been working at LinkedIn, now you're leveraging it probably in a different way. How do you connect a tool such as or social media such as LinkedIn with building a personal and a professional brand?
I think it's a super powerful tool, especially in terms of networking for the business, obviously, because that's where your main stakeholders will be. And so what I try to do is a combination of personal and storytelling, as well as really thoughtful facts and actual main takeaways and insights. Because I think that LinkedIn in particular, my potential client base are HR and business leaders. And so I want them to understand, why am I the best person to talk to when it comes to solving parental leave issues? And if they look at my LinkedIn, they will see that on one hand, I share really interesting ROI metrics and stats around what makes sense. I share thoughtful stories that I've heard from different types of users who've told me what's working, what's not. And I share also my personal motivation and why I'm doing this. And so I think that LinkedIn in that case is such a powerful tool because even though the content in general is professional, it touches on so many different emotional barriers as well, or emotional incentives for the HR or business leader to want hopefully to interact with me. And I've learned this when I was in sales, and I did pure sales at LinkedIn as well for over a year. And I really genuinely connected to my customers to the extent where when I left the sales team, actually my customers sent me chocolates, which is so nice. But it's really only because I genuinely see them as humans. And I think that's a famous saying where it's like people don't buy from companies, they buy from people. And
Yeah.
so that's a long-winded way of saying that I think that it's super important to have this personal and professional brand because that creates credibility. And again, you want to buy from a human, not from an institution or a business.
So you've identified a need that's probably unsolved in the market, but it's not relevant for you because you're not probably the end user, or it was not a challenge or a pain point for you as individual. So what was it like? What happened there?
Well, I had a huge opportunity and unique opportunity to take 1 month off earlier this year to actually deeply reflect why I wanted to start a business in the first place. And for me, the main reason is that I want to work on something that is impactful and that I'm passionate about. And so when I thought about the topics that I'm passionate about, I've always been someone who hugely cares about fairness and equality. And then I kind of zoomed in on that topic. And then I thought to myself, what are the areas that I know well? And because I'm a career woman, I was like, okay, women at work sounds great. And I started digging into what are the biggest challenges that women at work face today. And Ivan, this is where it was almost like a slap in the face when I realized how bad it's become or it's been for parents, but especially mothers when it comes to their career progression, when it comes to their salary, when so many different things, even emotionally and mentally, the things that they have to go through when they try to come back into work and have a successful career as a mom. There is this famous graph where you see male and female salaries going up, up, up. And actually, if you are a non-mother as women, our salaries align exactly with men. Like there's no problem. But you see how there's a huge kink in the fact that the moment someone has their first child, it flattens. And so I think I was passionate enough to about solving something like this because I think it'll actually have very positive knock-on effects on a lot of the other challenges that we face in terms of equality on salary or even seniority, etc. And what I would say is, even though, of course, when someone as an entrepreneur goes through the issue themselves, they have a lot of personal connectivity with it and they can feel the problem. But I almost feel like right now, the fact that I haven't been in that situation is a competitive advantage because there's three key stakeholders in this example that you need to look after. And I'm not biased towards any of them because it's either the employee who's pregnant or who is about to go on parental leave. There's HR and then there's the business leader. And I can put myself in all three shoes without being biased because I've not been in either of them. So
Mhm.
I think it's almost like a competitive advantage that helps me set these companies up for success, thinking more about, okay, how can we better retain? How can we boost productivity? How can we make sure that talent attraction is also something that they see the value in doing thanks to the parental support that they give?
Yeah, interesting. So why do you think there's not a valid solution today in the market, or not satisfying for this specific situation?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think it's a topic that is a bit taboo still. So, in general, like especially women going on maternity leave, there is still this societal, I would say, probably disconnect of what they want women to do. Do they want women to stay home with their child or do they want women to come back and work? And so I think already no one's really looked at this. To be honest, when I look at even studies and research, a lot of it is super old from like 2017 or before. So I know that it's not a topic that's very openly discussed because, in my opinion, for societal reasons. And secondly, I'm not sure that people have paid enough attention to see that impact in their own organizations. Because when I've talked to, for instance, the global head of HR at BNP Paribas for investment banking, I asked her this. I was like, okay, so how do you measure this? And she said to me, like, actually, you know what? We have our levers in one HR tool. And we have, in general, like people, like levers in the sense of leaving the company. And then we have the maternity leave and parental leave in a different HR tool. So even making that connection and understanding that impact is almost impossible for us unless we do it manually. So I think that tools have also never been built for showing that. Whereas she actually out loud live with me thought about the last 5 women that she knew that left. And she was like, wow, okay, they all are within 1 year of coming back from maternity. And so I was like, well, so clearly there's a problem. So I think it's just the societal awkwardness. There is really the tools right now don't make it easy to see that impact. And then I think that's why there's not been enough attention on it. But it's motivating because I'm hearing more and more from female leaders who are starting to see what I'm doing and who are coming to me being like, wait, I want that product selfishly for when I'm going on maternity leave. And so I think also that transition to women being in more senior decision-making roles can help. All
Yeah.
that to say, Ivan, I know it's going to be a long journey of education still, though.
Yeah, and educating probably it's the difficult or the hardest part of it. I understand because I'm facing this at home at the moment, so it's a topic I never thought about. But once it becomes real, it's important and it requires a solution. In that case, what do you believe are the options, or what do you believe it's a valid solution that Kundra is thinking to offer in order to solve it?
Yes, so I think that the most important one is the fact that it's integrated in everyone's workflow. That's always something I learned in terms of product adoption. If you're trying to build something that sits outside everything, it's not going to work. So I would start with that. And so in my case, knowing that my audience at the beginning will be more like startups, it'll be built into Slack. And the 3 key users, in my opinion, will be the person going on leave, their manager, and then also, of course, the HR team. And I think that there can be 3 very quick benefits. For the person going on leave, there is really little done in terms of timeline and transparency as to what needs to happen when. And so that's very stressful. That also means that there is not a lot of buy-in into the company afterwards because very often they don't see a vision as to where their career can go when they come back. And because no one talks about it, you just assume and you're afraid, like, what does that mean when I come back? Will I have a job? Is it going to be that job? Where can I keep growing to? Because I'm still motivated to work hard. So I think that's already one part. And then, of course, leaving out all the HR things in terms of applying for governmental benefits, etc. That's super hard that people have to do on their own right now. Then in terms of the manager, I think something that's very difficult is that when you're a manager, that's not something you've ever had to go through before, most likely. And I personally had that experience actually, because I had someone on my team leaving and I wasn't prepared for how to manage it. What do I tell
Yeah.
them? What are their options? Can I tell them that they can work from home more often to be more flexible? Like, I don't know. And then most importantly, and I think that's where the pain is really there's no clear transition. And so me as a manager, that means I'm stuck with figuring out how to, especially for instance in sales roles, how do I make sure that the quota gets hit while that person goes out? And I think there's a lot of opportunity to create best practices around that and help understand, like, okay, what can you do to make sure that you have business continuity while this person's gone? And then also, again, to help retain them by having proactive conversations about where they can maybe grow after they come back. And then lastly, HR, and that's such a quick fix, Ivan. It's kind of shocking because these processes are still done manually, which
Mhm.
is insane in an AI age. The fact that a people ops person needs to go into the HR tool, email the person that's out on leave to be like, hey, when are you thinking of coming back? It's so silly. And so that would be the whole solution, addressing some of the pain points I mentioned that I'm co-building with some of those HR leaders right now, actually.
Interesting. Do you believe it can be a global solution, or do you see it customized by segment or by country or by company size? How do you think in those terms?
I think the vision would be that it is a global solution, but because HR topics around maternity are so localized, how long does the government give you? How much money do you get from the government versus the company? I think it's not as intense as banking, obviously, but I still draw lines in terms of the difficulty of adapting that. That being said, with the advancements that we see in AI, honestly, I also feel like it can be much easier in the future where it's more of a copy paste. Like, I need you to help me figure out how to get the employee from here to here in the local country, and it can automate that. So I would say global. In terms of size, I'm still deciding. I'm still trying to assess. I think there'll be a use case and pain point for smaller companies that don't want to hire someone or don't want to dedicate time for someone to do this, so it can be automated for them. But I also see a use case where potentially in the future it could be white labeled and it is a module that you plug into a Workday or, some of those big companies that, again, don't necessarily have the time or want to focus on this themselves, but they won't mind just plugging in something so that they can add it to their offering.
I see. Teresa, to wrap up, now that you're building your real product, what's the one misconception or something you thought it was true about building your own business or your own product, but now that you're on it, you realize that that's not the case?
I will be honest with you, I was a bit afraid of the continuous momentum because you are alone. And I actually proactively chose for now to be bootstrapped. I don't want investors to pull me in different directions. I really want to stay focused. And so I was a bit afraid of, okay, how will I continuously drive momentum and make sure that I'm sticking to delivering on a regular basis? But this is where I have to give Konto a huge shout out again, because the way that we used to work at Konto with really key milestones already planned ahead for the whole year. And something crazy that we do is we put daily goals that are tied to those milestones. I do weekly goals as well. That helps me kind of structure. And so it's, even as a solo founder, having to self-motivate all the time, actually, thanks to this structure, it helps me stay focused. It's not always perfect, I'll be very honest with you, but I think that was a positive surprise because I was like, "Ooh, okay." I don't feel like I don't know where should I even start. I'm not at that place, thanks to a bit of structure and the learnings I had from Konto.
That's great. Teresa, we're getting to the end. So before we close, where can people find you and also what you're building, what you're doing? You mentioned the podcast, you're active on LinkedIn, but tell me more about it. Where can exactly people look for you?
Yes, please. So you can find me on LinkedIn, obviously. So feel free to connect with me, Theresa Gschwandtner. And I'm assuming that in your podcast, you'll have the full name. So people don't
Yes.
need to find me like that. And then you can just find me on Kundra.ai, actually. This is our landing page where we have the use cases outlined and the offer that we have to join in terms of pilot program. And my podcast is just under the name Kundra on both Spotify and the Apple podcasts. And then I also have a Kundra Notes Substack that basically summarizes all of the great learnings and turns them into very helpful tools for HR teams and business leaders. And I
Perfect.
have an Instagram too. Sorry, I always forget about that. It's also called Kundra.ai
All right. So Instagram, podcast, and LinkedIn
and Substack.
and Substack. Perfect. Teresa, once again, thank you so much for being with me today. I've learned a lot and you opened my eyes over a topic that I was not really aware of. So best of luck with Kundra and we'll follow up closely the evolutions.
Thank you so much for listening and for having me. It was great.